show is going to be more coverage of the, some people call this a Middle East crisis, some people are calling it a revolution, others are calling it, they have finally found their voice. What say you today? That's what we're going to try and cover. As you can see, I got a map on the screen of Egypt. You can see Cairo's kind of right up here with the red star. I'm not sure if you can see the star or not. But I don't know if you follow this or not. From Tunisia to Egypt, we now have Jordan and Yemen and the possibility of even Sudan wanting to and changing things in their government. There have been riots, or at least people that are wanting to stand up against such activities. And things are getting really, really crazy. I want to bring your attention to a National Review Online article. And I'm going to scroll this thing out here so you can see it. The National Review is pretty intense with this article, so I'm going to try and break it down for you so you guys can understand. I kind of covered this the other week. I'm just going to do a rehash again about the different groups that are involved. And this is by Joel C. Rosenberg in his Inside the Revolution. They have the radicals, which are these extremist Muslims who want to overthrow every place, and from North Africa to the Middle East to Central Asia, and replace them with Islamist dictatorships that believe Islam is the answer and the jihad is the only way. This includes Al-Qaeda, Iran 12ers, the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, and Hezbollah. If you guys are familiar with the movie Endgame or anything that happened in South Africa, the same guy and group from England that assisted South African freedom is currently talking to Hamas, Hezbollah, and even the Muslim Brotherhood. Reformers are another group. They're moderate Muslims who say Islam is the answer, but jihad is not the way. In other words, jihad is like wanting to fight. They want more freedom, more openness, protection of human rights, civil rights, free elections, free markets, and kind of Jeff Sonerson democracies. Jefferson democracy is actually a form of what a United States would call a difference between a Republican or a Democrat. Normally, political science majors will say Jeffersonian is not a Republican, but more of a Democrat. When you look at Jefferson as a whole as a president, some people say he's a Federalist, some people say he's a Republican / Democrat. So what that means is he's wanting more about an individual rights. That's what that means. These former Muslims want individual rights versus the rights of the government. Now, revivalists are another group. They're like former Muslims that don't believe Islam is the right answer. They do not believe jihad is the right way. They believe Jesus Christ is the right way. And these are actual people who have converted to Christianity and believe things are going the right way. They want a first century New Testament Christianity. They want to be apolitical, focused on evangelism, discipleship, church planting, pastor training, and spiritual renewal. They're getting pretty big since 1979. And if anyone's followed the Voice of the Martyrs, a lot of them are being killed. Over 70 Coptic Christians. The word Coptic means just Egypt. They even went to court and they were killed in Egypt. So Christians are being killed. The Mubarak is not doing anything to really assist Christians. He pushes Christians. He pushes Muslims, anyone else, only for his own meaning. Now let's turn your attention to the resistors. This is a secular Arab nationalist leader. What they're wanting to do is an example of kind of like Mubarak and the Syrian President Bashar Assad, Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, and the leaders of Saudi Arabia, and even Saddam Hussein. A lot of these countries are just out of control. They have the set rule. They're not really following an Islam thing, but if you go against the way, then you're destroyed. You're killed. It's just the way he does. Then resented or like weak Arab leaders are constantly, they don't have a choice. They go one way or the other. It all depends on how they feel, what's pulling them, the directions that they think and know and feel. This is what's going on all across the Middle East. It's not just Egypt. It's kind of like Christianity in general in America. You have some that are supporting conservatism, others that are not. So we go into that conservative liberal thing. It's kind of the same thing that's going on over here in Egypt, but it gets a lot more crazy. Now, I've been asking questions to students at Ohio University, and the biggest question that was asked of me to share on the show, what do I think about gas prices? I'll give you a clip of what CBSMoneyWatch.com, CBSNews.com says. It's the highest since October 3rd, 2008, up $2.85. Rumor is that gas could hypothetically go up to $4, $3.50 a gallon in the next 90 days. If these riots and things continue, because hardly anyone's working, hardly anyone feeding. The country's losing money. $90 billion, I think, or $1 billion, $90 million a day or something like that. If you think about over 100,000, 1 million people all in one town, coming all across Egypt, a lot of these people are probably going to possibly get fired. If they're not fired, no one's doing their job.
But already they're facing unemployment.
Unemployment
as high as what is in the U.S.
Yeah,
higher, because they're not actually giving the right numbers, because 40 million out of the 80 million people who live in Egypt are living in poverty.
Yeah, it's
even
really
when
crazy.
they have a job, they're still living in poverty. It doesn't matter if they have a job or not. They're not making enough money to even provide for their families.
Yeah, it's getting really, really crazy. Now I'm going to draw your attention to another thing that's going on, and I found this strange that it was in English, but it's in English. This is Fox News Latino. Tens of thousands march against Yemen's president. This was on the 2nd, reported of February, by Associated Press. And they did not want their dictator, President Ali Abdullah Saleh in Sassan, Yemen, to continue to be president. Looks like he's been in there quite some time. And he's not going to seek to pass power to his son. What is kind of interesting when it comes to these stories is how many people don't realize how many months and years in preparation. There's rumor the United States is involved. There's rumor there's other countries involved. This didn't just happen overnight by an accident. It's something that has been building several years. Ever since when the United States was originally going to go into Iraq the first time, the different tribes of Muslims said to the U.S. that they were going to assist with the removal of Saddam Hussein. Through other reasons unknown, and some that I won't get into detail right now, that didn't happen. But it put into place back in 1991, and even till today, what we're seeing in all these countries, they want an individual right of freedom, but they don't want the democracy or the republic that the United States has. They want an Islamic democracy republic. And if you put the wrong Islamic people in power, they're going to kill everyone else. But at the same point, they all want to get along. So what happens when you have a country like that, you're going to end up allowing them to have a seat in some kind of legislative office. What is this preparing for? What's going to happen next? I'll show you what's going to happen next. It's right here. Right here in the Jerusalem Post. The Muslim Brotherhood says, will prepare Egyptians for war with Israel. This was on the 1st. And it gets really crazy. Mohammed Gahim reportedly told Al-Alam that the Suez Canal should be closing immediately and the flow of gas from Egypt to Israel should cease in order to bring about the downfall of the Mubarak regime. He added, the people should be preparing for war against Israel. The Egyptian people are prepared for anything to get rid of this regime. If you got to think about these words for a minute. What exactly are the intentions of these countries, and where do they want to actually go next? Who are they trying to speak to? What voice are they trying to get heard? Is it yours? Is it really what an American would think? I think not. It gets really crazy. I want to bring your attention to a Washington Post article about our old friend George W. Bush. He said something a while back. Looks like in 2003 he laid a question. And he said, are the people of the Middle East somehow beyond the reach of liberty? Are millions of men and women and children condemned by history or culture to live in despotism? Are they alone, never to know freedom, never even to have a choice in the matter? See, this is part of the issue that I'm talking to you about today. Because when people don't understand how and why this big conglomerate of countries and individual groups, and they sit here in war and faction. If you look at the history of the United States and even the United Kingdom and even South Africa and other countries, everyone says, oh yeah, we need to have peace. We need to have peace. Peace is great, but peace does not always bring about what you need. Either you have to surrender your free will to accept that you can never have what you want, or you continue to talk, thinking talk's going to change while innocents are being killed or something's being taken away from you. At some point, somebody is not going to be able to deal with that anymore. It's a scary world that we live in, I have to tell you. I have friends that are been to Egypt, been to Israel, Tunisia, and elsewhere. I'm not going to mention who they are, so I don't put them in any danger. But I know people, and I'm not just saying I know people. Well, I've actually sat in the same room, have conversations with them. This was a few years ago. Some of them more recent, and things are pretty out of control. As Christians, what is our goal? What is our direction for what we're supposed to do here? I've been asked this question. It's like, well, how do I pray for the Middle East? How do I grasp what's going on? Because especially those at college, and they take the history class, they say, well, this is nothing new. These countries have been changed and switched borders year after year. I said, well, that's pretty true. But for this amount of countries, in less than 30 days, less than even a week, to one after another, after another, after another, say, I want change. Change starts to happen. Not enough change happens. How far will this go?
Well, remember we heard on the Christian radio talk show last night when we were coming home that the protesters are also destroying artifacts, historical artifacts in Egypt.
Yeah. So what does that have to do with Christians? How will that affect Christians? The mummies being destroyed. Well, because there's other heritages. Like, for instance, I heard on the radio the other day.
If we don't remember our past, we will not have a future.
That's right.
And that's what it comes down to.
A good ministry tool that a lot of people think about is they have found the body, they believe, of the king that was in the Red Sea when Moses parted the sea. And they said the body's bleached.
Yeah.
A bleached body.
Well, it's called the white mummy, they call it.
Yeah, and they believe this body is the king that Moses was being chased by.
Actually, no.
That's what they believe. That's what he said.
But the king wasn't destroyed, it was his army.
His army.
It was one of his soldiers.
Yeah, so they think it's either one of the soldiers or something or another. But anyway, it's getting really crazy. Plus, we look at all these weird weather patterns going on right now, and rumors of what countries are going to be invaded, what wars are going to happen, and exactly how and who is going to move to the next level. It's going to get creepy. Mm-hmm. Another thing that's happening are the journalists that are being held captive. It looks like recently Some of them been killed. Some
Yes.
of them been detained. Egypt releases researchers from Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International and 2 foreign journalists. So a lot of things are happening.
It's a very dangerous place to be.
They-
I mean, not just in Egypt, but I think in any Middle East country right
Yeah,
now. I think
they-
it's a very dangerous place
The United
for
States-
outsiders, especially.
The United States said pretty much be careful where you travel and who you talk to and what you do. That's kind of a normal thing during anything like this. We talked about on the show the other day about Revelation and its correlation to anything that happens in the Middle East. And I said the other day, history can repeat itself. Yes, that's something that Mark said, but it is true. To get a point across,
if we don't learn from our mistakes, history will repeat itself.
It does repeat. So what's going to happen here in the Middle East is this cycle of countries being overthrown amongst themselves or from another country will continue to happen. That's what's the other problem that a lot of people aren't talking about. When the government's been abolished in these different countries, other entities are going to try and want to come in and take over, and you have to see the direction it's going to happen. Israel does not have a lot of allies in the Middle East. It was kind of Jordan, not really Saudi Arabia, but they weren't doing a lot, iffy to say. And then Egypt was number one. Now we got this problem with Egypt. Everyone's eyes are on Egypt. What's going to happen next? What is the next direction?
So while our eyes are on Egypt, what's happening elsewhere?
Exactly. So that's why, I've been looking at these different stories to see what's happening and give it to you in a term that would make sense to you, because I don't want it to overwhelm you as a whole, saying, I just don't know, I can't understand. But these things do come to pass. We do know that the end times are coming, and we know that the end is always closer every minute. So when we return, I'll share more on what the Word of God says, and then we'll transition to our next topic. We'll be right back.